Traditional Dress of China by Emma Howard.
Part of the tradition of Chinese apparel is we can thank the history of textiles because in China textiles have actually been an integral component of China's culture and economy for many thousands of years. Today, China has a key role as a supplier of much of the world's textile production and, importantly, has a major influence on the fashion aspects, color, fiber, texture of fabrics and apparel. Let's talk about the history. China's roots in textiles go back to ancient times. Archaeologists point to the first textile as being felt, made of pressed and condensed woolen fibers that were used in Egypt, India, Turkey, and China. Legend has it that the emperor's wife, Lei Zhu, invented silk thread reeling made from silkworm cocoons she found on mulberry trees in her garden. Some historians credit China for the invention of the jacquard machine that would weave silk into cloth with raking patterns and ridged designs. Other historical markings cite the production and weaving of vividly colored silk tunics being worn during the Shang Dynasty, which was from 1766 to 1122 BC, and the start of trading of Chinese textiles during the Han Dynasty, which was from 220 to 265 AD. The Silk Road, which was a series of trade routes from China through the Middle East to Europe, dramatically expanded China's textile trade throughout the world in the 5th through 12th centuries. Let's fast forward quickly to modern times. Textile production continued to play an important role in China's history and economic condition. However, by the 19th century, although still a major player, China found itself losing its competitiveness as Western countries were making investment and advancement during their industrial revolution. Over the next 100 years, China made up much ground and arguably reclaimed its prominent global position. We can point to three major factors contributing to the turnaround. As textile production is extremely labor-intensive, China benefited from a low labor cost, which can be attributed to a population shift from rural areas to urban centers, where a large, unskilled workforce was looking for jobs. The second component was China's abundant access to raw materials. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, China's currency, the yuan, was very cheap, meaning other countries could purchase China's exports at attractive prices. In 1949, China became a communist country, which was a setback to its position as a trade partner to Westerners. However, in the 1980s, most of the restrictions and embargoes were lifted, and China was able to reestablish itself as a key global supplier of textiles, and the design began to change. More recently, China has continued to be the beneficiary of the world textile markets, being concentrated in Asia and to a lesser extent in Latin America. It is interesting to note that the US, which used to have a textile industry, now almost entirely relies on imports. Although the vast majority of China's textile production consisted of lower priced and lower quality textiles and fabrics, including the rapid growth of synthetic blends, there has been a growing trend that higher priced and higher quality fabrics, including wool and cashmeres, are coming from China. China is also known for a variety of fabrics and design that have had an impact on American fashion. But ancient China was known for its rich colors and embellishments that are evident by the garments worn by the Chinese emperors and royal family. The clothing was very closely associated with colors. Specifically, red was the color for summer, green for spring, black for winter, and white for autumn. In ancient China, most people preferred dark colors and they liked to coordinate their tops and bottoms so that they went together. This was to give off a more clean, polished, and dressed look. At this time, religion played a large role in people's lives. Since religion was so important, many Chinese symbols, some of good fortune, and religious images were put on garments. These elaborate designs were mostly used for emperors. An emperor's robe would likely have distinctive and unusual embroideries, like the dragon and cloud. Not only are these motifs beautiful, but they have important meaning. Both motifs are thought to bring good fortune to its wearer, and the design still holds its auspicious significance with modern China. Today, many children's clothing made with Chinese motifs include lions and masks of Chinese opera characters. Another traditional embellishment is macrame. Macrame is a gold knot that many people in China used for ornamental purposes years ago, and it's still used today. It is used on borders, shoulders, pockets, openings, bodices, and seams. Tying knots, then tightening them, and then adding finishing embellishments make macrame. The Chinese used to use macrame for wall coverings, upholstery, and even waistlines of female dresses. To make macrame, there are a number of different materials that can be used. Some include cotton, flax, silk, leather, and metallic metals.
After learning about how textiles are so important to the tradition of design, I want to go back and talk about the early development of clothing. Chinese clothes date back to the Paleolithic times. Clothing was first made out of animal skin and embellishments were made out of stones and animal teeth. Real clothing was not created until the Yellow Emperor, approximately 5,000 years ago. Now we're going to talk about the Shang dynasty, which from 17th century BC to 1046 BC. Traditional Chinese dress was created with a simple pattern of a blouse and skirt. As I mentioned before, people like to coordinate their tops and bottoms so that they went together. Also, the color white was very popular during this time. Now we are going to take a look at the Zhou dynasty, which was from 1046 to 256 BC. The long gown was created, and both blouses, skirts, and the gowns were worn. Red was the popular color, and the higher the social rank, the more embellishments were on the garments. This is where you can see the macrame, the motifs, and as I mentioned earlier, you would see all of these patterns and intricate designs on usually the emperors, because they were the ones who were at the top of society. Then there was a great shift. With the formation of the Republic of China, the Mao suit became popular for men and the Cheongsam for women. However, women also began to wear the Mao suit. It wasn't until the 1970s, when China implemented reform, that people started to adapt a more Western style. Traditional Han Chinese clothing was attire worn by the Han people about 2698 BC to 1368 through 1644 AD. Fu means clothes in Chinese. So this was the clothing of the Han people. Han Fu, Han clothing. Clothing at this time was improved, but it consisted usually of a long gown, like I mentioned before in the Zhou dynasty, with a cross collar, loose sleeves, and no buttons. But it did have a sash to hold it closed, as you can see in the pictures. This style was a little bit more conservative. Now let's take a look at another traditional Chinese style, the Chinese suit. It is a combination of the Manchu mail jacket of the Qing dynasty and the Western style suit. It is usually straight collared with coiled buttons down the front. Its color and design are in traditional Chinese style, but tailoring again is a little bit more Western and modern. As you can see here, it is in black, but it was also very popular in the deep red, green, and other very traditional Chinese colors. Here is the cheongsam. It originated from the Manchu female clothes, but it evolved by merging with the Western patterns that show off the beauty of a female body. Its features are straight collar, strain on the strain on the waist, coiled buttons, and slits on both sides of the dress. Materials used are usually silk, cotton, and linen. And cheongsam is the most popular Chinese attire in the world today. As you can see, it's more feminine and shows off a woman's figure a bit more than the earlier style of the wrap dress with the billowing sleeves. Since I spoke about some of the traditional Chinese attire, I wanted to really talk about the modern day inspirations. How has it affected the way we dress now? Well, New York-based designer Jason Wu in 2012 debuted his fall collection, and when asked about his inspiration for his show, Jason stated, "Instead of just slapping together some chinoiserie, I wanted my China collection to be a bit tongue-in-cheek." During his show, a model stepped out wearing a military green wool cape coat overlaid in black lace, with long silk tassels dangling from her ears. An onlooker was overheard saying, "We are in China." Jason Wu, who grew up in Taiwan, says, "There are three types of Chinese design. There's the military China, which inspired the Mao jackets and shirts, as well as the army green and red palette of the sportswear that dominated the collection. The belted puffy jacket, with armor-like quilting on the shoulders, is destined to be a hit," he said. There's also the historical China of the Qing dynasty, which informed the lusciously opulent embroideries that Wu has made his calling card. That was the shaved black mink embroidered onto the front of the epaulette of the dress that was the show's most winning piece. And there's the 30s and 40s Hollywood version of China. Inauthentic, the designer called it. But not only has Jason Wu taken inspiration from China, but also has so many other modern designers, such as Ralph Lauren, Marc Jacobs, and Philip Lim. At one point or another, these designers have taken the Asian route when designing. One of the most memorable Chinese-inspired collections was in 2011 by Louis Vuitton, which was then designed by Marc Jacobs. The theme was geisha haute couture. Marc Jacobs designed new and unique silhouettes of traditional kimonos made out of silk. In addition, the garments had extraordinary embellishments, much like what was used in ancient China. China was one of the first to start making textiles and is still one of the largest manufacturers in the world today. In 2010 alone, China's textile industry processed 41.3 million tons of fiber and accounted for 52 to 54% of the world's total production. China produces the most textiles and gives their large population a lot of jobs. Not only does the US look to China for manufacturing, but we also look to China for inspiration. China not only has a long history and tradition of the way that they dress, but through their revolutionary ability to create these textiles, that is what they are known for to us. Not only is there traditional silhouettes like the kimono style and the jackets and the mouse suit, but it's the fabrics, it's the colors, we think of China, we think of silk. When we think of Chinese fabrics, we think of the chinoiserie prints, we think of the dragons and the motifs. So not only is it the style of the garment that has been great influence on today and known for traditional Chinese design, but so is the way that it is made and manufactured that makes China such a strong country and area for apparel. I hope you enjoyed my presentation on Chinese textiles, a little bit of history on the tradition of Chinese dress, and a look at modern day wear and how they have challenged and inspired the way people dress today. Again, thank you so much, Professor Halle. I very much enjoyed the We Wore What When course, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.